About 3 million Canadians live and work in other countries. And even though they're abroad for their own reasons, writer John Stackhouse argues in his latest book that Canada would do well to make better use of them. The book is called Planet Canada: How Our Expats Are Shaping the Future. He certainly knows the file. He worked overseas as a foreign correspondent, and he was editor-in-chief of the Globe and Mail. He's currently your senior vice president with the Royal Bank of Canada, and he joins us now from Toronto for more. Hi, John.
Hi.
I learned so much about Canada reading this book, and I learned about how many Canadians are at the forefront of international organizations throughout the world. And you've written a book with many examples of Canadians who have moved abroad and been very successful. Who are some of the people who left a lasting impression on you?
Well, first of all, I'm glad you've mentioned institutions because not a lot of Canadians appreciate that Stanford, Johns Hopkins in Baltimore, and Cambridge, three of the world's best universities, are run by Canadians. That's just a small illustration of what Canadians are doing on the global stage. But the most interesting Canadians I met in the journey through this book are probably people you've never heard of. One is Rafer Wallace, who is one of China's pioneering green architects. Rafer grew up in Quebec, studied architecture at McGill, and then around the turn of the century, in the early 2000s, he wanted to go to where the world was booming, and Shanghai was his destination. Almost 20 years later, he's a resident there. His kids were born there. He's raising them there, but he's so deeply Canadian. And I share the Rafer Wallace story because he's an illustration of what we're missing as a country. He was one of China's first green architects, builds buildings that are environmentally friendly, and you know how fast buildings are going up in China. A lot of them are very harmful environmentally. He's leading a revolution in that, and he's created technology that is now being exported to the world. And moreover, he's created an operation in Quebec to help build his global market for this building technology and databases that help engineers and architects. So a small illustration of what Canada can do, because Rafer says in the book, he's waiting to help Canada. He's building a great business. He's helping China. He's a great entrepreneur. And Canada's missing a beat there because we're not working with the millions, as you say, Canadians who are out there.
You have dozens and dozens of examples in the book, and I can't even imagine the amount of research that went into writing this book. And so there are two ways to look at all these success stories. One, of course, is to be proud, but the other, I think, it's to be, it's a bit of a shame that their talent couldn't have stayed in Canada. How do you reconcile that tension?
I argue in the book we've got to think a lot more like Israel and Singapore, and
Why?
not worry about geography. We've got this great Canadian population. Absolutely, it'd be great if someone like Rafer Wallace stayed in Canada, or James Cameron, the great Hollywood film producer. But they can do just as much for Canada outside our borders as they do here if we work with them. And that's where we're really falling short. Other countries like Israel and Singapore, but also India, Ireland, Italy, there's scores of them that I go through in the book, are working with their global populations because we live in increasingly a networked age, and the pandemic has accelerated this, where networks are more powerful in many ways than institutions. We still need to work with global institutions, but we have to be much more network-minded, which is how the Israelis and Singaporeans think. We've got these networks of Canadians everywhere who can connect us with their networks, and so on. If you just look at the most powerful forces in the world this year, Black Lives Matter, and what Greta Thunberg is building on climate change, those are networks. And that's the sort of thinking that we as Canadians can really advance in the 2020s.
Can you give me, because in the book you do talk about what Ireland, Israel, India, Scotland are doing to leverage their expats. How can Canada, can you give us an example of how Canada, the Canadian government, can leverage their expats to advance the country itself?
Well, first of all, we just have to recognize that we have this 11th province. We don't have to formally make it a province, but recognize it and help these groups of expats build their own networks wherever they are. I profile the example in the book of the C100, which is an amazing group of Canadians in Silicon Valley who 10 years ago decided Canada was losing the tech race, and they wanted to help Canada help themselves as well. But they built this powerful network that has become a key advisor to the Harper government as well as the Trudeau government, which I think is important. This is a nonpartisan opportunity. They are helping bring Canadian entrepreneurs to Silicon Valley and then go back to Canada to build stronger, more globally focused companies. One of the first companies they helped is Shopify. So when we talk about how do we build 10 more Shopifys, one thing we have to do is work with the C100, work with Canadians in the Valley who can give us a leg up, who can give Canadian entrepreneurs a leg up. Take that thinking to Canadians in London, in Dubai, in Shanghai, in Mumbai, help them help Canada in those places.
You also write that Canadians have, you write that Canada continues to show a boundless capacity for brain drain debate, while the world focuses on brain circulation and brain trusts. What's the difference?
It's understanding that people go out, they come back, they go out, they come back. Some go out and they don't come back. Let's not fret too much about that. Sure, it's great if people gain global experience and bring it home. We need actually a lot more of that. But we also need Canadians out there who are staying out there who can take us into those global networks, help us trade more, invest more, build cultural linkages in different parts of the world to enhance Canada's presence in those countries. One of the lessons from the United Nations Security Council debate is that Canada's place in the world is shrinking. That's just math. Our share of kind of everything is going to decline a little bit. So how do we offset that with the power of our networks?
You mentioned before that the expats, well, in the book, you refer to them as the 11th province. Do we know how many people live abroad?
No, we don't know. There's no census of this. So I work with a team because we're almost shy about our expats, and there's also privacy issues that we need to be mindful of. But this requires more focus from the federal government to say, how do we, and it's not an intrusion, just keep a better map of where Canadians are in the world. I worked with a team of researchers at the Monk School at the University of Toronto, and we were able to put together an interesting database working with various censuses, not just the Canadian census, but censuses in other countries where they ask, what's your country of origin? So we were able to see how many people are identifying Canada as their country of origin and start to literally map out where the Canadians are. And that's how we were able to say with confidence, there's probably 2 to 3 million Canadians out there at any given time, working, studying, living outside our country for more than a short-term visit.
That's a big chunk.
It's a big number, and it is something we're underappreciating, and we're missing the opportunity to help Canada in a world that's going to be a little tougher, a little more challenging, but in a world that really, really values the strengths that Canadians can bring to different cultures, different markets, different parts of the world.
Why do some Canadians leave and choose to work abroad?
It's a great question. There's a real range, and it takes a lot of courage and a certain mindset to leave a comfortable country and a country of usually one's family and kinship. They go for world opportunities to make it on the world stage. They go to get away from certain aspects. They go for adventure. And then they stay because they love the opportunities that are out there. If you are a physicist or a movie actor or a poet, sometimes you just want to be in different parts of the world. That's okay. We're really good at bringing people to this part of the world. We need to be comfortable with Canadians going out to other parts of the world. And as I say, many are going to stay. And that's not a loss for our country if we don't let it be a loss, if we try to turn it into a gain.
We know that a lot of international students choose to make Canada their home after they finish their studies. But you argue that Canadian students should also study abroad. Why is that?
Canada is getting really good at bringing many of the world's best students to here, especially for post-secondary education. That's an enormous strength and a growing strength for our colleges and universities and for our country and our economy. We need to add to that by getting Canadian students out into the world. We don't, Canadian students don't leave as easily as foreign students come here for a whole bunch of reasons. If you look at other countries like Australia, they have gotten really good at encouraging and incentivizing students to study abroad. When students go abroad, they learn differently, but they also develop those networks. I devote a chapter, spent some time with some millennials in London who had gone largely for school, and they had stayed. And they, they might come back, they're still in their 20s, but what they really want to do is, in their different pursuits, in their jobs in London or Oxford, is to connect back to Canada better. And that's the missing link that we have an opportunity to correct.
And you argue that that's where the government can be involved. When people do leave Canada, where do they go?
So it's a fascinating shift. So the obvious centers, Silicon Valley, LA for Hollywood, New York and London, Hong Kong, as we know. But interestingly, there's a real growth in other centers like Beirut, Dubai, Delhi, and Mumbai. And this is a really important opportunity for Canada, because the children of immigrants who came here in the 80s and 90s, so millennial second generation Canadians, are going out into the world in big numbers. And that is a real opportunity for Canada. I met so many young Canadians whose parents had immigrated to Canada, and they then had gone out into the world. One is a young woman named Yasmin Rafai, whose parents are Iranian. She grew up in Edmonton. She went to Oxford, and now she is at Stanford in medical school. She's going to do some extraordinary things, I think, in the coming years and decades, whether she stays out in the world or comes back to Canada, or probably does both. But Yasmin is kind of the future. She is a children of different cultures, and that in a way is the story of Canada. And that is a great value out in the world, people who can speak to different cultures, who can bridge difference, something that Canadians were not perfect at, but we're better at than many cultures. That's going to be a growing strength for Canadians out in the world. It's going to be our calling card, but also our calling card for us as a country.
Just to pick up on what you just said right now, I want to read something from the book. And you write, whether it's in business or diplomacy, the arts or aid work, Canadians who go abroad often find that they have a unique voice in the world. Some are raised to recognize it. Others need time in a foreign land to feel the tug of a greater purpose and the desire to give voice to it. They've gone abroad not just to pursue their own interests or ambitions. They're out there because they are Canadian and need to speak up for principles that feel Canadian. Just to pick up from that, you write that Canada has a unique voice in the world. How so?
It comes down to mutual accommodation, which is in a way our very nature. We're not perfect at it, as I said, but we are better than most in accommodating difference, in building bridges between different perspectives, in being empathetic and being able to understand different perspectives. We kind of take that for granted a lot of the time here in Canada. That's incredibly rare out in the world. And I was fascinated to meet so many Canadians who had excelled in different organizations, risen to the top of those organizations, because that was something they had grown up with here in Canada and felt very comfortable with. There's a senior executive, he's now moved on, but he was at Deutsche Bank. And at one point he was the #2 person at Deutsche Bank. And he said he was the only person on the executive team who could bring the Japanese, the Germans, the Brits, and the Americans together and try to find common ground. It takes a Canadian. Dominic Barton, who I interviewed for the book, he's now our ambassador, Canada's ambassador to China, said that when he was the global head of McKinsey, he always knew when he would go into a meeting who the Canadians were. Because he said they were the people who asked questions and listened to the answer. And then he said, well, actually the Dutch are also very good at that, so I had to listen for the accent. But I think that's a really important point for Canadians to understand. Again, we're not perfect, but we are better at this than many in the world, and the world really needs this. It's not just other countries, it's not just the United Nations, it's corporations, it's organizations around the world that are increasingly made up of people from different parts of the world who need these Canadians to bring those different cultures, those different perspectives together.
Well, you're also right. As a country, we have to work harder to create the glue that bind expats with each other and with Canada, especially on days other than July 1st. What did you mean by that?
When you talk to Canadians in many parts of the world, I mean, they love the Canada Day celebration. They love getting together at a pub to watch a hockey game or the Olympics. But they say, boy, is that all you see in us? Just as people who should come together for a toast on Canada Day. We want to help the country 365 days of the year. And that's the mentality that so many other countries are bringing to their expat communities. Of course, they have national days of celebration. They bring expats together when a leader is in town, but it's really working on all the other days with these people who are usually at the top of their game in whatever they're doing, and can do so much for Canada if we reach out to them and allow them to take us to new places, take us into new conversations, and also ask them what they think we should be doing, because this is also a big kind of miss for Canada. We're not reaching out to this population of 2 million or so, most of them incredibly accomplished people in whatever they're doing, and just saying, hey, we're struggling with this issue or this opportunity. What do you think we should be thinking about?
Well, I think some people watching this might think that you leave Canada, you benefit from public school education, you get to vote. But you say in the book that you think that the expats should be giving more back to Canada. How can they do that?
So there's different opportunities, and as I get into some detail in the book, I mean, we need to rethink our approach to taxation, to benefits of healthcare and education for people and their children who may enjoy Canadian citizenship abroad. That's all. There's no right or wrong approach to it, but there are better approaches to it than what we've got now. So that will require some review. But we also need to bring these people back, literally as well as figuratively, to bring them into the Canadian debate about all the issues that we're wrestling with in this country for a more global perspective, but a global perspective that is informed by a Canadian experience. It's fascinating in the pandemic to come across all the Canadians around the world who are working on the COVID vaccine, for instance, who are in health organizations in other countries. As I mentioned, the head of Johns Hopkins University, which is maybe the leading university in the study of COVID, is Canadian. One of the leading scientists at Oxford University working on the vaccine project is Canadian. How do we bring them in to help us think through our own approaches to the coronavirus? They would love to be part of that conversation.
I've lived abroad, as have you, and I mentioned to you before we started taping that when I lived abroad, I think I realized I became more proud to be a Canadian. Is there anything that Canadians that are living abroad can teach us as a nation?
Absolutely. I mean, it's incredible what distance, both in miles and time, teaches us all. And as you said, the Canadians out there really have had to come to grips with what it means to be Canadian, because they don't have all the geography around them. And simply asking them, what does it mean to be Canadian, can help us understand what it means and what we should value as being Canadian. And the longer they're away, it's interesting, the more patriotic they seem to be. And it's not just nostalgia, although nostalgia can be a force. I think they recognize the longer they're away, truly what it means to be Canadian. I had a great conversation with one of Silicon Valley's most successful entrepreneurs and investors, Chamath Palihapitiya, who grew up in Ottawa, the son of refugees, lived on welfare often, the family did. And he was one of the early executives in Facebook. He's now a leading force in global investment, has his own firm called Social Capital. And he said, the longer he's away, the more he appreciates the value of Canadian public schooling. He said, I am who I am in Silicon Valley because of the public school system in Ontario. And then he got to go to Waterloo as a co-op student and on from there. But he was only able to truly appreciate this when he was in Silicon Valley.
John, thank you so much. That's all the time we have today. I think this is a great book for a lot of people to study, to figure out, to recognize how proud we should be as a nation. And the next time you talk to Alexa, you should know that the woman behind Alexa is a Canadian. So thank you so much, John. We appreciate your time.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is brought to you by the Chartered Professional Accountants of Ontario. CPA Ontario is a regulator, an educator, a thought leader, and an advocate. We protect the public. We advance our profession. We guide our CPAs. We are CPA Ontario. And by viewers like you. Thank you.